Hi, good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday, or whatever day it is that you're watching this. If you're watching on the replay, it's good to be with you this morning. And I wanted to talk to you today about imposter syndrome. You know, this feeling that if anyone really found out who you were, the jig would be up, or the gig would be up, or whatever the saying is, and you would lose love. You would lose belonging. You would lose things that really matter to you. And when we're under the spell of imposter syndrome, we can feel anxious. We can feel doubt, a lot of self-doubt, insecurity. We can feel hypersensitive or aware of mistakes, or being really critical or judgmental of ourselves when things don't go quite right. So if this speaks to you, if you sense that there's some area in your life where you just feel like, you're not really the good mom that you're pretending to be, or you're not really the amazing partner that you want everyone to think you are, or if you're not really the stellar employee that you are portraying, that if anyone really found out who you were under the surface, they would remove their friendship or their partnership or their contract, with you as an employee. Then stay tuned. This is for you. Wow. I have to say, I have never experienced, I should say this first. When I first had imposter syndrome described to me, it just was so relieving. Did you know that I read something that 70% of all therapists have imposter syndrome? And I think that the main thing, and that's not just, that's what I read about that particular vocation, but I think I've talked to lots of people and a lot of my clients, and this nagging fear that you have what you have in your life under false pretense breeds so much pain and discomfort. And I also want to say that just because we think it doesn't make it true. So let me give you a good example of this. I'm reading, or I've read already, but I'm rereading Make Peace with Your Mind by Mark Coleman. Hi, Kathleen, welcome. And this is an awesome book. I've met Mark. I've been on retreat with him twice at Spirit Rock. He's an awesome teacher. And this is all how mindfulness and compassion can help free you from your inner critic. It's the text that we're reading in my program called Radical Self-Love, which begins next week. I have some wonderful folks on board for that. And so we're going to be diving into this text in more depth and detail. But let me read this to you, and this might bring you some relief. Just because sometimes it's like we think that because we have these nagging, doubting thoughts that we quickly make the assumption without even knowing it that they're true. So the first piece of this is remembering what I talk about a lot is don't believe everything you think. As a matter of fact, a lot of what you think can be questioned and isn't necessarily true. And it's not the doubting thoughts themselves that are the problem. Believe me, I have many of them. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to do one of these videos and felt like, who are you to talk about this stuff? Like, who are you? There's this voice inside me that's like, who do you think you are? Before I teach a yoga class, it's like, who do you think you are? Like, you don't really know what you're talking about. You don't really have the right credentials. It's hilarious because I've been practicing and studying yoga and meditation with amazing teachers for the last 20 years, So when I check out the doubts, I realize that they're false. And that's the clue here. That's the key here to unhooking. It's not about having doubt. Doubt will come. As surely as you're alive, doubt will be here. But you don't need to believe the narrative. You don't need to believe the story. Okay, so let me give you some examples. I just gave you some examples with me of my, hey Lizette, welcome. I just gave you some examples for me and my my practice, my coaching practice, and my yoga teaching, like where doubt comes up for me, and it'll come up in the form of like, who do you think you are? But I think it can come up in other ways too. Like think about if you're in a partnership, right? And you might feel like your relationship isn't the way it's supposed to be, for example, and you're silently comparing yourself to some other couple or some idea of how you think it should be. And then there's a way in which you feel like, people don't really know what's really going on here, that somehow we're presenting a false idea or a false image of what's truly going on. And that can feel unsettling and out of integrity for us, when in fact, well, let me just go into this, okay? And I think that this will make more sense. So, Maya Angelou, right? The late Maya Angelou, amazing woman, wrote so many books, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings being one of them. Highly influential, strong woman. I mean, think of her. She said this: I have written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find me out. Maya Angelou. Does it mean that she quit writing books? Hell no. Does it mean that she quit speaking up and giving her message and changing people's lives? And hell no. But she had this inner doubt as well. Let me see. Oh, it's actually estimated that 70% of all people have imposter syndrome, not just therapists. I just wrote that here. Meryl Streep, the most Academy Award nominated actor in history, said in an interview, "Why would anyone want to see me again in a movie? And I don't know how to act anyway, so why am I doing this?" Meryl Streep and her voice of doubt. I mean, Meryl Streep doesn't think she can act. Like there's a part of her that doubts that she can act. How hilarious is that? Einstein admitted that he felt like an involuntary swindler. Einstein. Steinbeck, John Steinbeck, the famous writer, he wrote in a diary, "I am not a writer. I've been fooling myself and other people." The last one, Sheryl Sandberg wrote in her Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg has said, "There are still days when I wake up feeling like a fraud." Perfect example of how deep doubt around your belonging to this life and your vocation and your relationships as you are, that somehow there's something missing from you and that you're putting on an act, is very common, and it's not the truth. Clearly. It's so, all of those people I just mentioned, we would all attest and say like, oh my gosh, no, they're amazing writers and business people and thinkers and teachers. And yet they've all had that nagging voice of doubt creep in. And if we're believing that voice, then it will take us over. Keep us small. Actually, it creates the feelings of being a fraud. Sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the truth is you are whole and complete just as you are. And when we can anchor into that truth, breathe through the doubt, acknowledge it when it's there, just as these people have done. They all acknowledged their doubt, they came clean with it, and they kept moving forward. Just because you think it doesn't make it true. If I didn't go and teach a yoga class every time I had the thought that I don't know what the hell I'm doing, I would probably very rarely go teach. You know what I mean? So you might sense any areas in your life where you're feeling like a fraud, or you're feeling not quite right. Whether it be in your friendships, in your partnerships with your significant other, in your parenting, in your work. Maybe it's sort of an overall sense of, I'm putting on a show here, I'm putting on an act. If anyone really figured out who I was, no one would love me. Can you sense that feeling within you? And rather than believing the narrative, the story that's telling you, can you give space and permission for the feeling to be there, the feeling of doubt, of insecurity, of fear? No need to argue with it, tell it it's not true. Instead, simply turn towards it. Put a hand on your heart. And remind that part of you that long ago believed, for whatever reason, that you weren't good enough. It's going to be okay. You have a right to be here. You have something to say. You might even ask, what your particular doubt is in this particular area of your life. You might even ask it what it's needing. Kind of get out of the argument, the thoughts around it, and instead go right into the heart and into the body. The first step with anything we do is always in letting be. We get clearer about the story of self-doubt. We don't need any agenda or need to change it. Just the mindfulness of it itself unhooks us a bit from its grasp, and we can start to tend to the wounding within that belief pattern is masking. And we can just start to bring ourselves the words of reassurance that we may be needing. We can allow the doubt itself to really be there, and then we can open up our perspective to include other things that are pleasing, good, and beautiful in the moment. Like right now, you might just look around the room and notice what's inspiring, what's pleasing, what's good and true. Could be that you're well in your body, you're well enough to listen to this message. Could be that the light pouring in the room is quite pleasing. As long as you're staying in this moment, there's not much problem. But when we get lost in our ideas and our concepts about what's coming, what has been, or we start fretting about ourselves and our shortcomings and our own feelings, then we get into trouble. We go down this sort of rabbit hole of despair. And the way out, the way through is always right here in this moment. The more we can abide here in this moment, the better off we are. Notice any doubting thoughts you might be having aren't related to what's happening right here and now. Your awareness is untainted, undisturbed. And this awareness is the gateway to the ease and the peace and the joy that you seek. And it's always about coming home to this awareness in the present moment. So I hope this served you today. Please like or comment below if it did. Share this video if you think it would help someone that you love. Look at my pretty flowers. I didn't have flowers for a few days last week. They're back today. Oh, it was nice to be with you today. I'll see you either Thursday or Friday this week. Sending you so much love and many blessings. Namaste.